The message flashed red on Tom Reed's screen for the third time that morning. He rubbed his tired eyes, looking at the latest failure report from Sector 7. The crystalline structures were growing back again, faster than ever before. Through the massive observation window of his office, he could see the shimmering blue-purple formations stretching toward the orange sky of planet B472. Engineering Chief Reed, a soft voice called from his doorway. "The Council requests your presence immediately." Tom turned to see his assistant, a tall, slender being with silvery skin. After 5 years on this planet, he was still the only human in the entire terraforming operation. "Let me guess, Rod," he said, using the shortened name his assistant had chosen. "They want to know why we're failing." The crystalline growths had been their biggest challenge since the project began. The Galactic Council had spent 3 centuries trying to terraform this planet, making it suitable for various species to colonize. Everything had gone according to plan until they reached the final phase. That's when the crystals started fighting back. Tom grabbed his tablet and headed toward the council chamber. The corridors of the base were filled with beings from across the galaxy, each chosen for their expertise in planetary transformation. Most of them moved aside as he passed, some out of respect, others out of instinctive caution. Humans were still rare in galactic society, known primarily for surviving on a planet that should have killed them. The council chamber doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, 12 beings sat around a curved table, their forms varying from nearly invisible gas clouds to solid crystalline structures. At the center sat the project director, who most closely resembled a giant praying mantis. "Chief Reed," the director's translator conveyed in a neutral tone. "Please explain why we are losing ground in all sectors." Tom activated his tablet, projecting a 3D map of their operation. "The crystal growth rate has increased by 300% in the past month. Our current methods can't keep up. We clear one section, and by the time we reach the next, the first is already overrun again." "Impossible." One of the gaseous council members pulsed brightly. "We are using the most advanced molecular disruption technology in the galaxy. These are simple crystal formations." Tom held back a sigh. After 5 years, they still didn't understand. "With all respect, council member, there's nothing simple about these crystals. They're adapting to our methods. Each time we clear them, they come back stronger and more resistant." The chamber filled with the musical tones and electromagnetic pulses that indicated distressed alien discussion. Tom waited patiently. He had a solution, but he knew they wouldn't like it. "Do you have a proposal, Chief Reed?" the director finally asked. "Yes," Tom said, straightening his shoulders. "We need to bring in a specialist. A human specialist." The chamber went silent. Even the gaseous beings stopped their usual shifting movements. "A human specialist." The director's translator crackled with what might have been concern. "Your people's methods are rather extreme." "Exactly," Tom replied, bringing up an image of Earth on his projection. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to fight back. These crystals, they're fighting us. We need someone who knows how to fight back harder." "You're suggesting we abandon centuries of refined technological approaches for what exactly?" another council member asked. Tom smiled slightly. "I'm suggesting we try something the crystals haven't adapted to yet. Something unpredictable. I have someone in mind. Her name is Kate Stone, and she's the best demolitions expert in human space." Demolitions. Several council members spoke at once, their translators creating a cacophony of shocked voices. "The project is failing," Tom said firmly. "We can either keep doing what isn't working, or we can try something new, something the crystals won't expect. At this point, what do we have to lose?" The director's antennae twitched thoughtfully. Perhaps you are right, Chief Reed. Make your call. But remember, if this fails, it will be on your head." Tom nodded, already composing the message in his mind. The aliens wanted precise, careful, and methodical. They were about to get a crash course in human problem-solving instead. He just hoped Kate was available, and that the planet would survive her methods. Kate Stone's shuttle landed with a heavy thud that made the alien welcoming committee flinch. The landing pad sensors flashed warning lights about the aggressive docking procedure, but Kate ignored them as she walked down the ramp. She wore standard Earth mining gear, complete with heavy boots that clanked against the metal surface. Tom waited at the bottom of the ramp, trying not to smile at the nervous shuffling of the alien officials behind him. "Welcome to B-472, Ms. Stone." "Drop the Ms. Stone stuff, Tom. We worked together on Mars, remember?" Kate adjusted her jacket and looked around, her eyes widening at the sight of the crystal formations in the distance. "Well, those are prettier than what you described in the message." The project director stepped forward, its insect-like form towering over both humans. "We are grateful for your arrival, Expert Stone, though we hope you understand that certain protocols must be." "Is that one growing?" Kate interrupted, pointing at a nearby crystal cluster. Without waiting for an answer, she walked straight toward it, pulling out a handheld scanner from her pocket. The alien officials hurried after her, their translators creating a chorus of worried protests. Tom followed at a more relaxed pace, already seeing the method in Kate's apparent madness. "This is fascinating," Kate said, kneeling next to the crystal. "You've been trying to dissolve these things. That's your big plan." "We use the most advanced molecular disruption technology," one of the council members said proudly. "Each crystal is carefully—" "Yeah, that's your problem right there," Kate cut in again, standing up and brushing off her knees. "You're thinking too small, too gentle. These aren't just random crystals. They're working together, like a system." She turned to Tom. "You got any explosives on this rock?" The council members moved back as one. The project director's antennae went rigid. "Explosives? Near the delicate terraforming equipment?" "Absolutely not." Kate pulled out her tablet, fingers flying over the screen. "Look at these readings, these crystals. They're not fighting back because they're aggressive. They're fighting back because you're being too soft. It's like an immune system. If you tickle it, it just gets stronger." She walked in a circle around the crystal cluster, ignoring the increasingly agitated alien officials. "Tom, remember that situation on Europa? The ice formations that kept rebuilding themselves?" Tom nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "We had to break through all at once." "Exactly." Kate's eyes lit up. "These folks have been basically poking the planet with a stick for 3 centuries. No wonder it's fighting back. We need to show it we mean business." She turned to face the council members, who had huddled together in what might have been concern or fascination. It was hard to tell with some species. "Here's my proposal," Kate said, projecting a 3D map from her tablet. "We set up a controlled blast pattern. Nothing too big, just enough to disrupt the crystal growth all at once. Show the system we're serious." "This is madness," one of the gaseous council members pulsed brightly. "We cannot risk." "Want to see something interesting?" Kate interrupted once again. She pulled a small device from her pocket and pressed it against the crystal. The high-pitched hum filled the air, and the crystal shrank. Everyone fell silent. "Simple vibration frequency," Kate explained with a grin. "Found it in about 2 minutes of scanning. Your fancy molecular disruptors probably never even tried this because it seemed too primitive. But sometimes primitive works." Tom watched the council members looking between the shrunken crystal and Kate. He could almost see their thoughts shifting, their carefully held beliefs about proper technological approaches crumbling like the crystal had. "If this works on the small scale," Kate continued, "imagine what we could do with some proper demolition charges. Instead of fighting the planet bit by bit, we show it all at once that we're not going away." The project director's antennae twitched rapidly, a sign of deep thought. Perhaps we could run some control tests." Kate's smile widened. "Now you're talking. Tom, help me get my equipment from the shuttle. And somebody find me whatever passes for coffee on this rock. We've got some explosions to plan." As they walked back to the shuttle, Tom leaned close to Kate. You planned that whole show, didn't you? Sometimes you have to shock people into seeing things differently, she whispered back. Even if those people have 6 legs and communicate in colors. The crystals glittered in the distance, as if watching. Soon, they would learn what happened when humans were called in to solve a problem. The morning sun cast long shadows across the test site as Kate finished setting the last explosive charge. She stood up, dusting off her hands and admiring her work. 20 carefully placed charges formed a perfect circle around a large crystal formation. All teams, clear the area, she called into her comm unit. In the distance, she could see the observation dome, where the council members huddled, their various forms pressed against the transparent walls. Tom stood beside her, checking the readings on his tablet. They're still nervous, he said, glancing at the dome. Half of them think you're going to blow up the whole planet. Kate laughed. If I had a credit for every time someone thought that about my methods. She did one final check of the detonator. Besides, this is just a small test. Barely enough boom to wake up the neighbors. The alien technical team scurried past them toward the safety zone, their movements quick and jerky with anxiety. One of them, a younger engineer named Blue, a simplified version of his actual name, lingered behind. Expert Stone. Blue's translator hummed, May I stay and observe from closer? Kate looked at the young alien, whose crystalline body structure sparkled with what she had learned was excitement. She grinned. Sure, kid, just stay behind the safety line. Tom, give him some blast goggles. As Tom helped Blue with the protective gear, Kate took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. After 3 days of planning and convincing the council, they were finally ready to test her theory. All teams report clear, her comm crackled. Awaiting your signal, Expert Stone. Kate raised the detonator. Remember everyone, this isn't about destroying the crystals. It's about sending them a message. In 3, 2, 1. The explosion wasn't particularly large, but it was precisely controlled. The charges went off in sequence, creating a wave of force that rippled through the crystal formation. The ground shook slightly, and a cloud of dust rose into the orange sky. As the dust settled, Kate heard Blue make a sound that his translator couldn't quite interpret, something between surprise and joy. The crystal formation hadn't been destroyed. Instead, it had changed. Where before it had been growing aggressively in all directions, now it had pulled back, forming a more compact and stable structure. Look at these readings, Blue exclaimed, his crystalline form vibrating with excitement. The growth rate has dropped by 67% in the affected area. Kate walked forward, scanner in hand. Just as I thought. The planet's defense system responds to strength. All this time, you've been trying to sneak past it, which just made it fight harder. In the observation dome, the council members were having what appeared to be an animated discussion. The project director's antennae were moving so fast, they were almost a blur. Tom's comm unit buzzed. After a brief conversation, he turned to Kate with a smile. They want to expand the test. 3 more sites, different crystal densities. Now they're getting it, Kate said, already planning the next round of explosions. Blue, want to help me set up the charges for the next test? The young alien engineer practically bounced with enthusiasm. Yes, I have been studying your explosive patterns. I believe I understand the principle of resonant force distribution you're using. As they walked back to the equipment storage, more alien engineers approached cautiously, their translators buzzing with questions. Kate answered them all, showing them how to properly handle the charges, explaining the importance of blast patterns. By sunset, they had completed 2 more successful tests. The council's initial horror had transformed into cautious optimism. Even the most conservative members couldn't deny the results. The crystal growth was finally being contained. You know what this means, Tom said as they packed up for the day. They're going to want to scale this up. Kate nodded, watching the orange sun sink behind the crystal formations. That's the plan. But first, we need to teach your engineers how to do this properly. Can't have them thinking all humans do is run around blowing things up. She paused, then grinned. Well, not without good reason anyway. Blue, who had stayed to help clean up, made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. The old ways are not always the best ways, he said. Sometimes you need a Deathworlder's perspective. Looking at the successfully treated crystal zones, Kate couldn't help but agree. Sometimes the best solution was the one that seemed crazy at first. Humans had learned that lesson long ago on Earth. Now it was time to teach it to the galaxy. The emergency alarms woke Tom in the middle of the night. Red lights flashed through his quarters as he rushed to get dressed. His comm unit was already buzzing with dozens of messages. Tom, Kate's voice crackled through the speaker. Get to the main control room now. You need to see this. When Tom arrived, the control room was in chaos. Alien technicians moved frantically between stations, their translators creating a cacophony of worried voices. The main screen showed something he had never seen before. The crystals were growing at an impossible rate. Kate stood at the central console with Blue, both of them analyzing data streams. Look at this pattern, she said as Tom joined them. It's not random. The crystals are growing with purpose. On the screens, crystal formations were sprouting up in geometric patterns, forming what looked like massive circuits across the planet's surface. The project director burst into the room, its usual graceful movements replaced by agitated jerking. The colony in Sector 12 has been evacuated, the director announced. The crystal growth is threatening to breach their protective dome. Blue's crystalline form flickered with excitement or fear. It was hard to tell which. Expert Stone, look at these energy readings. They're similar to ancient defense systems found on other worlds. Kate's eyes widened. She grabbed her tablet and started pulling up historical data. That's it. We've been so stupid. This isn't just a natural formation. It's a planetary defense system. And we've been fighting it wrong the entire time. Tom finished her thought. Even our explosions were just making it think it was under attack. The project director moved closer to the displays. Are you suggesting that 3 centuries of terraforming efforts have been interpreted as an invasion? Exactly. Kate slammed her hand on the console. The gentle approaches weren't being careful. They were being seen as sneaky infiltration attempts. And my explosions, I just convinced the system that it was under direct assault. More alarms began to sound. New crystal formations were appearing near vital infrastructure. The colony's main power plant was now threatened. We need to evacuate the entire planet, one of the council members said, their gaseous forms swirling with distress. We must admit defeat. No, Kate said firmly. We need to do the opposite. We need to communicate with it. Everyone in the room turned to stare at her. Think about it, she continued, pulling up more data. The system responds to force by matching it. But what if we show it something it's never seen before? What if we demonstrate that we're not trying to destroy the planet, but work with it? Tom watched as she quickly sketched out a plan on her tablet. Kate, that's insane. You want to trigger an even bigger reaction. Sometimes you have to make things worse before they get better, she replied. Blue, you understand the crystal patterns better than anyone. What do you think? The young alien engineer studied her plan, his crystalline form pulsing with rapid calculations. The math works. But the risk. Another alarm sounded. The crystal formations near the power plant were growing faster. We don't have time for careful consideration, Kate said, facing the project director. Either we try this now or we lose everything you've built here over the last 3 centuries. The director's antennae twitched rapidly as it processed the options. Around them, more warnings flashed on the screens. The crystal formations were now forming complex patterns that none of their sensors could fully interpret. What exactly do you propose? The director finally asked. Kate's plan appeared on the main screen. A complex series of coordinated explosions and energy pulses that would create a specific pattern in response to the crystal growth. We show it we understand, she explained. We mirror its patterns, but with our own twist. Like, like a handshake. And if you're wrong? Tom asked quietly. Kate looked at him with a grim smile. Then we'll have plenty of time to discuss it during the evacuation. But I don't think I am wrong. This planet isn't our enemy. We just haven't been speaking its language. The crystal formations continued to grow, their patterns becoming more complex by the minute. In the distance, through the control room's windows, they could see the structures rising like glittering mountains against the night sky. The project director's translator crackled. Do it. But understand, Expert Stone, if this fails. I know, Kate nodded, already moving to implement her plan. But sometimes the only way to solve a problem is to make it bigger first. Tom watched as she began giving orders, coordinating teams, setting up the biggest gamble of their careers. The fate of the entire colony now rested on a human's crazy idea. Somehow, that felt exactly right. The colony's main hall had never been so crowded. Beings from every sector had gathered to hear Kate's plan. The room buzzed with nervous energy as she stood before the massive display screen, with Tom and Blue at her side. What I'm about to suggest will sound crazy, Kate began, her voice carrying across the silent room. But right now, crazy might be our only option. She brought up a map showing the crystal formations. They now covered almost 40% of the terraformed areas, their patterns growing more complex by the hour. We're going to trigger the biggest reaction this planet has ever seen, she continued. We'll use synchronized explosions at 12 major crystal nodes, combined with energy pulses that match the planet's own patterns. The room erupted in chaos. Translators struggled to keep up with the flood of protests and questions. The project director raised all four arms, calling for silence. You want to provoke an even stronger response? A council member asked, their gaseous form swirling with agitation. The system is already overwhelming us. Kate nodded. Yes, because we're not fighting anymore. We're communicating. She turned to Blue. Show them what we found. Blue stepped forward, his crystalline form glowing as he projected data onto the screen. The crystal patterns aren't random. They follow mathematical sequences similar to communication protocols found in ancient defensive systems. Expert Stone's plan isn't to defeat the system. It's to complete the handshake. Tom watched the crowd's reaction. He could see the moment when understanding began to dawn on some faces, or equivalent sensory organs for non-humanoid species. Think of it like a test, Kate explained. The planet's been watching us for centuries, trying to figure out if we're a threat. Every time we tried to be gentle, it saw deception. Every time we used force, it responded with force. Now we're going to show it something new. Understanding. She brought up the details of her plan. The explosive charges would be placed in a pattern that mirrored the crystal's own growth, while energy transmitters would pulse in sequences matching the planet's mathematical language. If I'm right, she said, the system will recognize that we understand its patterns and respond accordingly. If I'm wrong. She paused. Well, the evacuation ships are ready. The project director's antennae twitched thoughtfully. The risk is enormous. Not just to the colony, but to you and your teams. The crystal reaction could be violent. That's why I'll be at the central node myself, Kate replied. I won't ask anyone to take risks I won't take. Tom stepped forward. I'll be with her. Between the two of us, we have the best chance of adjusting the sequence if something goes wrong. Blue's crystalline form pulsed with determination. I will coordinate the energy transmission teams. My people understand crystal harmonics better than most. The room fell silent as the project director considered the proposal. Outside the windows, they could see the crystal formations glowing in the evening light, their patterns shifting and changing like a living thing. Finally, the director spoke. We have 12 hours before the crystal growth reaches our main power core. If we evacuate, 3 centuries of work will be lost. If we try this and fail, we might lose even more. Its antennae swayed gently. But sometimes, the boldest plan is the only plan. Begin preparations. The room burst into activity. Kate quickly organized the teams, sending engineers and technicians to their assigned positions. As the crowd thinned, Tom noticed several younger aliens gathering around Blue, volunteering for the more dangerous positions. "They're starting to think like humans," he said to Kate as they gathered their equipment. Kate smiled, checking her explosive charges one last time. "No, they're starting to think like problem solvers. Sometimes it takes an outsider to show you a new way of seeing things." Through the windows, the crystals continued their relentless growth, their patterns becoming more intricate with each passing minute. In 12 hours, they would either make history or lose everything. Looking at Kate's confident expression and Blue's determined glow, Tom felt surprisingly calm. Yes, the plan was crazy. Yes, it might end in disaster. But that's what humans did best, turning impossible situations into unlikely victories. They had 12 hours to prove that sometimes the craziest plan was the best plan. 12 hours to show an ancient planetary defense system that not every visitor was an enemy. 12 hours to make the impossible possible. "All teams report ready." Blue's voice crackled through the comm system. The orange sun was rising, casting long shadows through the crystal formations that now surrounded them on all sides. Kate stood at the central control station, surrounded by explosive charges and energy transmitters. Tom worked beside her, making final adjustments to the equipment. Around them, the crystals hummed with energy, their patterns shifting faster than ever. "Remember," Kate's voice carried to all 12 teams positioned around the colony, "the timing has to be perfect. We're not fighting the planet anymore. We're dancing with it." Through the command screen, they could see each team in position. Some were led by newer alien engineers who had volunteered despite their fear. Others were veteran terraformers who had seen too much to doubt anymore. "Energy readings are climbing," Tom reported, watching the numbers spiral upward. "The system knows we're up to something." Kate nodded, her fingers flying over the control panel. "Good. We want its attention." "Blue, start the transmission sequence." From 12 points around the colony, energy pulses began firing in carefully calculated patterns. The crystals seemed to pause their growth, as if listening. "First response detected," Blue announced, his crystalline form glowing with excitement. "The system is watching us." Kate took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. "All teams, prepare for simultaneous detonation. Remember, this isn't an attack. We're completing a circuit, speaking the planet's language." 10 seconds to detonation, Tom counted down. The crystals around them began to pulse with their own light, matching the rhythm of their energy transmissions. 5 seconds. The humming grew louder. 3. Kate's hand hovered over the master control. 2. The crystals blazed with internal light. 1. Now, Kate hit the button. 12 explosions rang out simultaneously, their force carefully controlled and directed. The shock waves rippled through the crystal formations in perfect geometric patterns. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the planet responded. Crystal spires shot skyward, growing faster than ever before. But this time, they weren't random. They moved in sync with the energy pulses still being transmitted by the teams, a complex dance of growth and energy, each responding to the other. "It's working." Blue's excited voice filled the comm. "The system is mirroring our patterns." But something was wrong. The crystal growth wasn't stopping. New formations erupted from the ground, surrounding each team's position. "Kate," Tom's voice was tense, "we're being enclosed. All teams report the same." Kate watched the readings on her screen, her mind racing. "No, this is good. It's not attacking. It's connecting." Everyone hold position. The crystal walls rose around them, creating 12 perfect chambers. Inside each one, the team stood surrounded by pulsing, glowing crystal formations that moved in perfect harmony with their energy transmissions. "Look at the pattern," Kate pointed to the main display. "It's not random. The system is linking us together." She was right. The crystal formations had created a massive circuit, connecting all 12 positions into a single network. Energy flowed through the crystalline structures, picking up the rhythm of their transmissions and amplifying it. "Blue," Kate called through the comm. "What are you seeing?" "The mathematics. It's beautiful," Blue replied, his translator barely able to contain his excitement. "The system isn't just responding to us. It's improving our pattern, making it more efficient." Suddenly, all the crystals flashed with brilliant light. When it faded, the aggressive growth had stopped. Instead, the formations had settled into stable, geometric patterns that pulsed gently with internal energy. "Status report," Kate called out. "All teams check in." One by one, each team reported the same thing. The crystals had stopped growing. Instead, they had formed stable structures that seemed to be working with the planet's existing systems rather than fighting them. Tom looked at the readings in amazement. The power output. These crystals aren't just stable, they're actually helping maintain the terraforming systems. Kate smiled, placing her hand on one of the crystal walls. It felt warm, almost welcoming. "We did it. We stopped speaking to it like an enemy and started treating it like a partner." Through the crystal walls, they could see the orange sun rising higher, its light creating rainbow patterns through the new formations. What had been a crisis was now turning into something beautiful, a perfect blend of natural system and colonial technology. "All teams," Kate announced, "Operation Reset is complete. And I think we just made a friend." The crystals pulsed once, as if in agreement. 1 month after Operation Reset, the colony had changed completely. Where once there had been a constant battle against crystal growth, now there was harmony. The crystal formations had become an integral part of the colony's infrastructure, strengthening dome walls and enhancing power distribution. Kate stood in the observation room with Tom and Blue, watching new colonists arrive through the recently expanded spaceport. The crystal formations glowed softly, helping guide ships to their landing pads with patterns of light. "Sometimes I still can't believe it worked," Tom said, shaking his head with a smile. "We spent 3 centuries fighting this planet, and all we needed to do was listen to it." Blue's crystalline form sparkled with pride. "The Council has approved my proposal to create a new department dedicated to crystal integration. Many young engineers have volunteered to join." Kate grinned, watching a group of alien engineers working with the crystal formations below. They no longer showed fear or hesitation when approaching the structures. Instead, they worked confidently, using the techniques she had taught them to communicate with the planet's defense system. "Speaking of the Council," Tom turned to Kate, "they want to know if you'll stay on as head of planetary communications. They're planning similar projects on other worlds with active defense systems. They want a Deathworlder in charge." Kate raised an eyebrow. Times really have changed. The project director entered the room, its movements now smooth and relaxed. "Expert Stone, your methods have proven more than successful. You've revolutionized our approach to terraforming." Kate walked to the window, watching the crystal patterns shift and flow. "I didn't do anything special. I just saw what everyone else was too careful to see. Sometimes you need to make a big noise to start a real conversation, and nearly give the entire council a heart attack in the process," Tom added with a laugh. The director's antennae twitched with what they had learned was amusement. Perhaps that was exactly what we needed. We had become too set in our ways, too convinced that gentle and subtle was always better. Below them, a new crystal formation was growing, but not like before. Now it grew in controlled patterns, working with the colony's engineers to strengthen a new building's foundation. The sight would have caused panic a month ago. Today it was just another sign of progress. "I'll stay," Kate decided. "But on one condition, we start teaching these methods to everyone, not just the crisis response teams. Every engineer, every terraformer, needs to understand that sometimes the craziest solution is the right solution." Blue moved closer to the window, his crystalline form reflecting the light from the formations below. "I have already begun documenting your methods. Many of us younger engineers believe this will change everything we thought we knew about planetary adaptation. It already has, the director said. 3 other colonies have reported similar defense systems activating. They're requesting your assistance. Kate smiled. Well, looks like we've got our work cut out for us. Tom, think you can handle a few more crazy plans? As long as you promise not to blow up any more planets, he replied with a grin. Hey, I didn't blow this one up. I just convinced it to be friendlier. The crystal formations pulsed with light, as if laughing along with them. In the month since the reset, many colonists had reported that the crystals seemed to respond to emotions and conversations. The planet's defense system wasn't just working with them, it was learning from them. As the orange sun began to set, casting rainbow patterns through the crystal structures, Kate thought about how far they'd come. From fighting a losing battle to finding a new way forward, all because they were willing to try something that seemed impossible. You know what this proves? She said, watching the new colonists marvel at the crystal displays. It proves that sometimes you need a Deathworlder, not because we're tough or aggressive, but because we know what it's like to adapt, to find new ways to solve old problems. The others nodded in agreement as the crystals glowed warmly around them. On the horizon, the terraformed sections of the planet stretched out endlessly, now protected and enhanced by the very system they had once fought against. The plan hadn't just succeeded. It had opened up a whole new way of thinking about how to work with planetary systems instead of against them. And it all started because someone was willing to try the impossible. Sometimes that's all it takes. A crazy plan, a bit of courage, and the willingness to make a really big noise.